welcome back to Fantasy Nuts UK. This is the What's Next series, and today we will be looking into the free agent running back scene and what it means for fantasy football. Now, I'm delighted to be joined today by Greg Mongello. He is at FF Dynasty DGen. He's an analyst over at Multiple First Fantasy. Greg, how are you doing, friend?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Lewis. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump straight into it, I think. And this name, I have him on a lot of my dynasty rosters personally as well. Kareem Hunt, he's coming off a 2-year, $12 million contract, but he's 27 now. What are we doing with him?
So I was looking around and I'm seeing him in some of the trade calculators trading as a low running back 3 to a high running back 4. So I actually haven't had a lot of Kareem Hunt. I don't have him on many of my rosters, and he's a buy for me for the first time in a while because I think he's priced correctly, and I think he may land well. I have to tell you, I'm a Denver Bronco fan, and there's a little piece of me that thinks he's the one who's going to land over there, be Sean Payton's Alvin Kamara clone for a year or two. For those prices, I'm taking a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2022 was the first time he never finished as a RB1 where he hadn't missed time. So he played every game, but he didn't have the same role, not as many touches as we're used to with him. But the talent's there for sure. He's used to working in a committee, which is the way the NFL seems to be going now. So that won't be an issue if he was to land in Denver with Javonte Williams there. And he's still really low, but it's the age thing, isn't it? 27.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I'm an ageist with running backs. And I will run light at running back. But Kareem Hunt is the kind of value, very old running back, and that's getting pretty old, 27, that I'm very into at that price.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost essentially free. But the next guy, now, he's coming out of his rookie contract. So I doubt the Eagles will franchise tag him just the way they use their running backs. But Miles Sanders, he's coming off his best year in terms of yards and carries.
Yeah. Well, I think Miles Sanders has a wide range of outcomes. Free agency can be unkind to running backs, although sometimes they land in the situation where they get more touches than they've ever had. And I think Miles Sanders, depending what happens with the top tier of guys, he could end up as one of the most attractive free agents and get a great landing spot. Or he could shuffle down into a committee where he's getting less touches than he was getting in Philadelphia. He's a hold for me. I would probably wait to see if I had him, but I'm not really looking to add him at price.
Yeah, absolutely. Because until we know where he's going to go and what situation he's going to be in, he's kind of like that fringe RB1 sort of year on year. And it's a tough situation because this year in Philly, he had 11 touchdowns. That's his most on the season. So he was getting the more valuable touches, but it's hard to, without knowing, it's hard to gauge, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and he looked like he had a receiver's skill set coming out of college, but then he wasn't used that way. So you could see him getting more of that work somewhere else, or maybe that's just not in his NFL repertoire. So I think there's a wide range of outcomes, is how I would put it with him. I have some Miles Sanders, and I'm probably just keeping what I've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'll be a discount again this year for sure in any startups. But the next guy, David Montgomery. Now, we've seen a little bit of an emergence from Khalil Herbert, and it's almost a similar situation to what they got in Dallas, but we'll come on to that in a little while, where Herbert's the more explosive back, but Montgomery's from the same draft class as Sanders. Is the franchise tag possible maybe for him?
I doubt it. I tell you, I'm buying Khalil Herbert at price. I think he he averaged almost 6 yards a carry last year. He is quite a good player, I think. It wouldn't surprise me if they paired Khalil Herbert with a rookie behind him, and let David Montgomery walk. Montgomery and Sanders were in the same class. I have always been a little more partial to Montgomery than Sanders. So I think he also has a wide range of outcomes where he could, as they say now, get the bag, right? He really could be a guy who gets 3 for 15 to go be a lead back, or maybe not. Or maybe he goes into a worse timeshare because he was very volume dependent. So, but I like David Montgomery, so I'm a little more bullish on him than Miles Sanders. But I think those are the two guys who are very comparable from the same draft class.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Montgomery, for me, he's only had one season where he has fully done it for the whole year, back in 2020, where he finished as the RB4.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always done it and put together a good run of games at some point. Like, I think it was the last 6 weeks of 2021, he was a league winner. He was like the RB3 overall or something on that stage. And he's done that every year, but it's just the consistency with him. Like you say, he needs a lot of volume.
Yeah, he really does. But he has a good skill set. There's nothing he does badly, I think. He catches the ball okay. He pass blocks pretty well. So we'll see how he lands too. But I like the player.
Only over 4 yards per carry once in his career, and that was 2020. But like you say, where he was the full lead back until 2021, he not really much competition. He was having to do all the hard yards as well. But there's a lot of guys from the 2019 draft class that have come up as free agents this year. And another one who doesn't need that full workload to be serviceable, Devin Singletary.
So Devin Singletary is in a tier of players for me who I worry about how the market's going to go for them. I love Devin Singletary, to be frank. You talk about league winners in 2021. Devin Singletary won me some leagues in 2021. I had some Rashad Penny, Devin Singletary backfields that went on to titles. And I'm very fond of the player, but I don't know if he's going to ever have as many carries and opportunities in an offense that is good as he has had so far last year. Because I start to count the teams, and we've got the three guys we already just mentioned. I think Singletary is down here in a tier with a couple of other players. I think Damian Harris is a player in this same tier who probably won't be retained by his team. And I look at those guys, and then I look at the spots, and I think some of these guys are going to be backups. So I don't love the future for Devin Singletary, to be frank. But he's a good player. Maybe he moves into more of a pass catching role. Maybe he goes to Denver. Maybe he goes to New Orleans with the Kamara situation. But there's this big draft class coming, right? Yeah. So I could easily see one of these guys getting a spot where they look like they're at the top of the depth chart for 6 weeks, and then they get Zach Charbonnet dropped on top of them.
Yeah.
Right. So I worry about him a lot, Devin Singletary.
Yeah, it's a really funny one because he's had solid RB2 production the last 2 seasons whilst being part of a committee. But Buffalo, it seems like they've been trying to replace him through the draft since 2020. We've had Zach Moss, we've had James Cook last year, and no one's really quite took over him. But going on to a new scenery in not as good an offense, because there's not many offenses as good as the Bills anyway. Situation-wise, it's going to be tough for him, I think.
Yeah, he could go to a team where they throw to the running back more. That is one thing that could help him. But yeah, I struggle with him. He and Damian Harris are two veterans who are right there together with me, where I like the players well enough, but I just don't think they're good enough to be safe assets the way these things go.
Yeah, I mean, if you need to make space on a roster, if you've got short benches or things like that, I think they're possibly even cut candidates in your dynasty leagues.
Oh, goodness, yes. My leagues are usually a little deeper than that.
Yeah, same, but you do have the odd one.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one that's real thin. Yeah. Do you have any other players on this tier?
The next guy, maybe actually, that we're going to talk about, possibly, because it's Alexander Mattison, right? So same draft class again, and for me, he's probably the best out and out handcuff in the league.
Yeah.
We've never. It's a very small sample size though, because he's never had that length of games where we can see that, okay, this guy is legit full time, but he's very good when he's been needed.
Somebody is going to try to get cheap at running back and go with him, and he may get that Michael Turner, that mythical Michael Turner backup to starter free agent boost. He's a good candidate for that, or maybe it doesn't happen. I think he's a gamble, but at price, I think he's an interesting gamble.
You see, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm a Vikings fan myself, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Minnesota on the cheap, because of they're having some trouble with Dalvin Cook trying to get him to restructure. He ain't having it. His agents being a bit of a knob, and these things happen. We don't need an out and out bell cow like Cook no more. It's a different offense, and I think Mattison's re-signing on the cheap, maybe a short deal. Who knows?
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe Cook leaves and Mattison gets a 1 year's deal, and then they replace him either in this draft or next offseason. They figure out what to go next.
Yeah. They really like Ty Chandler coming out as well, and he had some injury issues and things like that. So let them two compete, maybe.
Very interesting. I don't hate that. Yeah.
For me, that's why he's in that sort of Damian Harris tier with Devin Singletary, because even the future's unknown for all of these players, right? But Mattison possibly has a more stable future with the Minnesota connection, and if we lose Dalvin Cook, then it's a job he knows.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do think he's not a good enough player to be safe from this excellent draft class, right? If they come up in the third round and see best player available on our board, it's a running back, they'll just go replace him, right? So, but if he dodges that, he could be very good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this running back class is one, when you really dig into it, it's so deep. Yes. There's going to be guys on day 3 that are, fantastic, and I can't wait to see him work out on Sunday. I believe actually he's at the combine.
Yep. There are a few I'm really hoping to see, and I also want to see some of the smaller backs weigh in. I'm really want to see if Devin Achane is 180 or a little more usable weight. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. But the final guy, we mentioned it earlier, Tony Pollard. So he was basically Zeke's backup, wasn't he, until last season, where it was a magnificent breakout. RB8 overall in PPR, explosive, over 5 yards per carry on nearly 200 carries. Possible franchise tag, you think, maybe?
I think it's on the table. He's either the franchise tag. I don't think Saquon or Jacobs will get to free agency. I think Pollard is probably the best guy who gets to free agency. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Cowboys decided to tag him and then use that as leverage to force Zeke to take a pay cut or else cut him. I think that is where it all leans. I know just yesterday, Jerry Jones said they might use their first rounder on a running back, and Bijan Robinson is a local Texas boy. So that's all. That also is possible, but Jerry talks. So I think he'll be back more likely than not. But the floor is he goes back to the same situation and continues to take over more. And he could also go back and Zeke leaves and he gets all the work, or he could leave somewhere for a big contract and get all the work. I think the floor is what you got, the situation he had last year where he was fantastic. I drafted him in a startup, my only startup that I've finished so far this offseason. I drafted him as my running back 1. And couldn't be happier. I think there's a lot to like about Tony Pollard for a 2-year window here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with the broken fibula he sustained in the divisional round just gone, the numbers he was doing this year were ridiculous. And like you say, if Zeke ain't in town or if he moves on somewhere and them carries increase a little bit. But I think it helps him having someone like Zeke around, because I was very much a Zeke guy. And more thing when Pollard proves it, okay, then I'll be convinced about it. And he did last season. But I think Zeke being around helps him. Them short ones where it's just like running into a brick wall on third down and things like that to get a short gain. And I think that helps keep Pollard healthy. But it would be a very Jerry Jones move to draft Bijan Robinson in the first round for me.
It would be on brand. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Can I give you one name that I like that is a free agent running back here? I really am into D'Onta Foreman.
Okay.
So if you take his 11 games after CMC left last year and project it out to 17, his pace was 295 carries, 1,355 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And if you take his 6 starts in Tennessee the year before and do the same thing, it's 300 some carries, 1,300 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I think somebody's going to pick him over some of these guys. I think he might finish with a bigger contract than some of these guys here, and he's cheap right now. So that's one I'm trying to buy too.
I can really see Carolina re-signing Foreman.
Yeah, I can
too. With Hubbard there, and then take a punt on a day 3 running back from this draft, and I don't think that hurts him at all. Staying in Carolina, because he was fantastic.
Yeah, and he's won me leagues 2 years in a row, and he's cheap. So I'll just throw that one into this pile of free agent running backs for your viewers.
Absolutely. I mean, that is about it. We obviously mentioned Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs being the top names of them, but they're likely going to end up back where they was last season. Probably. And Greg, thanks for joining me. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I'm over at Multiple Firsts Dynasty Football on YouTube, where we do a show every week where we check out some buys and sells, and we'll have some draft content, prospects, and so forth. And you can follow me on Twitter at FFDynastyDGen.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It will be available wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time.